By day, the Sahara does not forgive weakness. The sun does not merely shine here. It scorches everything alive, making the horizon melt and tremble in waves of burning haze. Every road ends here. The vehicle has to be left behind, because no wheel can go any farther. Beyond this point, there is only one way forward on foot, step by step across a dead, desiccated landscape. With every step, stone cracks beneath your boots, heated so intensely that it burns even through the soles. All around you is pure chaos. Geological debris, piles of rock, and savage stone thrown together by time. And it is here, in the middle of this primitive, accidental heap of nature, that the eye suddenly catches a detail that shatters the entire picture of the world. A line. It appears clearly and unmistakably. A vast, perfectly straight trench cut into the stony flesh of the desert. It slices through the earth and shoots in a straight arrow from the eye of the Sahara, all the way beyond the horizon toward the ocean. Nature does not favor geometry. Nature prefers curves, channels, and the randomness of collapse. But what can be seen here under the merciless sun is a direct challenge to common sense. It looks like a gigantic scar, as if some cyclopean tool carved across this land thousands of years ago, with no regard for the terrain. When you stand at the edge of that trench, only one disturbing thought pulses through your mind: this could not have happened on its own. Someone made this. Nature does not tolerate right angles and mathematically precise lines. Nature prefers curves, chance, and the chaos of geological processes. But what cuts across the rocky surface of Mauritania? We are used to seeing the Sahara as an eternal desert. Millions of square kilometers of dead stone, scorched clay, and endless sand dunes. But the geological memory of the Earth preserves a completely different picture. Roll time back only 5, perhaps 10,000 years, and this lifeless hell would have looked like paradise. Picture immense savannas, dense tropical forests, full rivers dozens of kilometers wide, and giant freshwater lakes. Lakes with green shorelines where herds of elephants wandered and hippopotamuses rolled lazily in the water. This was the Green Sahara, the age of great rains, the age when this land was one of the most comfortable places to live on the entire planet. And it is here, amid that ancient fertility, that the key to one of the most haunting mysteries in human history is hidden. The Eye of the Sahara. Today, geologists call it the Richat Structure, an enormous formation, almost 50 kilometers across. Perfect concentric rings, drawn as if by a compass on the body of the planet. Now it is a weathered mass of rock whose scale astonishes astronauts in orbit. But back then, thousands of years ago, those rings looked different. Scientists confirm that during the age of the Green Sahara, this region held abundant freshwater. Imagine the deep circular depressions filling with river water. Before you rises a central island, surrounded by a broad ring of water. Beyond it comes a ring of land, then water again, and then land once more. Does that not sound familiar? That is exactly how, down to the smallest detail, the great ancient Greek thinker Plato described the legendary capital of Atlantis, the center of an extraordinarily advanced civilization that vanished in a global catastrophe. Skeptics have argued for centuries that Atlantis is nothing more than a beautiful philosophical fable. But let us trace the chain by which this information was passed down Plato did not invent this story out of thin air. He recorded what he learned from his ancestor, the statesman and sage Solon. Solon, in turn, brought the story from Egypt, where he had traveled in search of knowledge. Egyptian priests in the temples of the city of Ses told him an ancient tradition inscribed on sacred columns, a tradition about people who had lived far to the west, where the sun disappears beyond the horizon, where today the dead sands of Mauritania lie. The memory of that place was carried from generation to generation by those who had seen the water-filled eye of the Sahara with their own eyes. The green paradise began to die. The rains ceased. Rivers became drying channels, and lakes turned into salt flats, and people moved eastward, toward the Nile Valley, carrying with them the story of a great ringed city. But if that civilization truly existed in what is now Mauritania, if this is not merely a coincidence, then traces should remain. And they do. Those same straight lines cutting through the desert. Huge channels, unnaturally straight. Some of them run for miles without changing direction by a single degree. Were these colossal irrigation works an attempt by an ancient civilization to save its oasis, to gather the last remnants of water, as the Green Sahara began its relentless transformation into desert? Or were they transport arteries along which laden ships once moved? The human mind is built to crave wonder. The moment we see a precise form in the desert, we want to declare ancient builders and forgotten technologies and be done with it. But in this story, we will draw a strict line. We will not blindly believe beautiful legends. We are descending into the depths of time, to a place where, beneath shimmering heat and freezing nights, the truth about the Green Sahara lies hidden. The capital of Mauritania is the last outpost of familiar civilization. Beyond it, the desert begins. Dunes, sharp stone, and a landscape so powerful that you cannot look away. An environment where the human being becomes, once again, nothing more than a physical body, a grain of sand against eternity. The bad news is that the desert is a virtuoso deceiver. The good news is that the desert is a flawless preserver. And it is precisely that rare combination that makes the Sahara the ideal setting for a monumental investigation. Looking at these scorched rocks, it seems as if it has always been this way. But the stability of the Sahara is an illusion. Roughly from 15,000 to 5,000 years ago, North Africa was completely different. Scientists call this phase the African humid period, or the Green Sahara. The monsoon system shifted far to the north, in places where it is now impossible to survive, even a single day without stored water. Green savannas spread out and vast freshwater lakes rolled under the sky. But do not imagine some peaceful lost paradise. The Sahara has always existed at the limit. The boundary between life and death here was never clear. The sands retreated and returned again and again. And the end of that age was not sudden. In some regions, climate destroyed life quickly. In others, the land resisted drought for centuries, slowly fading along with the people who tried to survive there. This colossal pendulum was driven by two planetary engines. The first was the orbital cycles of the Earth, which changed the distribution of solar energy and the strength of the monsoons. The second was the planet's own internal mechanism. Disappearing vegetation changed the land's ability to reflect light. The ground stopped retaining moisture. Winds lifted more dust, and drought began feeding itself. The process worked like a switch, and it was at the very moment of that great drying that our story was born. The water was leaving, and people were changing their routes, struggling to survive, and moving after life as it slipped away. How can we claim that water once flowed here at all, when all that surrounds us now is dry clay and sand? Science does not take anyone's word for it. It has its own recorders. Isotopic traces in microscopic organic remains reveal ancient rainfall levels with precision. Layers at the bottom of dried lake basins can tell us what brought them there: river flow or desert storm. The landform itself preserves dry valleys and channels that physically could not have formed under today's hyper. But there is one technology without which our investigation would be blind: remote sensing. A satellite gives us a scale no human on the ground can access. In 2015, this led to a stunning discovery in Mauritania. Radar revealed a giant buried river network along the coast. Its main channel stretched for roughly 520 kilometers. And this was not just an isolated line. Underwater studies showed that this vanished river continues into a deep sea canyon on the ocean shelf, about 400 kilometers long. Cyclopean underwater structures like that form only where powerful rivers have been pouring into the ocean for centuries. Recently, our team returned from an ocean expedition. We explored the seafloor at the very place where that ancient river once met the ocean. Very soon, we will publish a detailed report and share what we found. Meanwhile, we return to the Sahara, the road, the dry plain, and straight lines vanishing into the horizon. When you first see this footage, the temptation is immediate to declare that these are the man-made canals of an ancient civilization. It looks as though someone dug out this colossal network for a purpose. But what if no one intentionally created these lines at all? Let us think like researchers, not like hunters of cheap sensation. Any geometry this perfect must be tested against three logical scenarios. The first version, geology. Nature often outperforms any engineer. First, there is the wind, the greatest architect of the desert. Second, there is tectonics. Shifts in the Earth's crust and deep fault systems can split rock into flawlessly straight fractures. What looks to us like an ancient highway may in reality be nothing more than a scar on the body of the planet. The second version, co-authorship between people and nature. Those same ancient paleochannels. Water by itself rarely flows like a ruler. It branches and twists. But what if people in the past did not dig canals from nothing? They could have used natural fractures or old riverbeds and modified them for their own needs. Deepened them, cleared them, straightened them, and turned them into an ideal transport or irrigation system. The third version, hidden engineering. What looks from orbit like the straight bed of an open canal could in fact be the ruins of underground infrastructure. In arid regions of the ancient world, people built enormous subterranean water systems, known as canals or fogaras. The water flowed deep below the surface, shielded from the sun, while only neat rows of ventilation shafts appeared above ground. Over time, those shafts collapsed and merged into long, even trenches, easily mistaken for canals. The fourth version, the work of intelligence. What if we set healthy skepticism aside for a moment? Imagine that this is not a natural fault and not a modified riverbed, but a colossal project created from scratch, carved through solid rock from the first stone to the last. It is hard to believe, because the scale of such work would require technologies ancient people should not have possessed. And yet human memory preserves echoes of this kind of mega construction in some of the oldest myths. A perfect example comes from the Australian Dreamtime. Among Aboriginal traditions, there is a striking legend about primordial ancestors, reshaping the landscape of the continent. One story tells of a powerful bird woman. According to the myth, she methodically carved a gigantic trench to release water and divide land from land, digging an entire strait. Standing before these immense vertical walls in the desert, one thought arises almost against your will. Perhaps the ancient myths about gods in half, human beings tearing open the earth, were not just stories told around a fire. What if they are memories, encoded in metaphor, of a civilization unknown to us, one that truly possessed the resources and technology to cut through stone plateaus, as if through butter, leaving behind giant, geometrically perfect canals? Our task is to come down from the sky to the ground, to combine the view from space with the view of a person walking over these stones, to show where the mind deceives us, where it mistakes what it wants to see for what is really there. When night falls, the desert changes the rules. Spending the night among the dunes is a collision with primordial reality, a moment of terrifying, crystalline clarity. By day, the Sahara burns you with heat. By night, it crushes you with endless emptiness, piercing cold, and a silence so dense it begins to ring in your ears. In that darkness, the imagination paints its own images of the past. You desperately want the dead dunes around you to turn green again. And in the blackness, you almost see the silver gleam of waters flowing through long, dry channels. And we know that water was here. 5,000 years ago, during the last interglacial period, a green corridor of life already existed here. The desert died and rose again many times, laying one age on top of another. And at the center of all this lies the eye of the Sahara, the Richat Structure. From hundreds of kilometers above, it looks like a target, irresistible to seekers of mystery. Circles must mean a crater. A crater must mean catastrophe and legend. But official geology offers an answer no less grand than any myth. The diameter of these rings is about 40 kilometers. This is not an impact mark. It is a colossal geological dome created by forces deep within the earth. Millions of years ago, magma lifted the sedimentary rocks upward. Then water and wind took over. Like a giant lathe, they shaved away the layers unevenly. Harder rocks remained as ridges. Softer rocks turned into depressions. Layer by layer, this stone eye emerged. At its center are rocks formed in high-temperature fluids. The stones from the eye of the Sahara that you can touch with your own hand are a frozen chronicle of the planet, tens of millions of years old. They were here long before human beings, long before the Green Sahara. And here we approach the most fragile boundary of all, the legend of Atlantis. In Plato's dialogues Critias and Timaeus, there really are details that sound uncannily suited to this place. Plato's account mentions straight water channels laid across a plain. The ancient text even gives exact dimensions. The canal is about 30 meters wide, the spacing between them about 18.5 kilometers. The total length of the system is an astonishing 1,800 kilometers. Science reads those numbers as philosophical allegory, as myth constructed for reflection on the ideal state. But human nature always looks for meaning, even in silent outlines. The immense Richat Structure, with its concentric circles, fits perfectly into the image of a lost capital. And this is where we must make the central choice. The Richat Structure is a magnificent geological formation, born from magma and erosion over millions of years. The Green Sahara was real, a land of rivers and lakes, and off the coast of Mauritania rest enormous, dried channels. Atlantis may well be an echo of real genetic memory within humanity, a memory of the destruction of that flourishing, prehistoric Africa. A way for ancient people to speak about the pain of migration and the loss of their green paradise. But we have no right to claim that the Richat Structure is Atlantis itself, or that every straight line is an ancient man-made canal. For that, we would need artifacts, foundations, and precise dating. Without them, the line between scientific documentary and fantasy would be crossed. Even if the line we are following turns out to be nothing more than an ancient fault that changes nothing essential, it still reveals the paradoxical memory of this landscape. It shows how a person walking across the stones of the eye of the Sahara is in fact walking across the surface of frozen time. Time does not need to pretend to be a beautiful myth in order to remain truly great. The desert is not ready to hand us finished answers. It offers only clues. Learning how to read them matters more than simply believing an old story. If this way of looking at the world speaks to you, join us on the next expeditions. This year we are traveling to Egypt, to the pyramids and ancient temples of the Nile, to Mauritania, to the Richat Structure, known as the Eye of the Sahara, to Turkey, to Central Anatolia, to the Caucasus, to the dolmens of the Black Sea coast, to Armenia, to ancient monasteries and megaliths, to Mexico, to the pyramids of pre-Columbian cultures, to Lake Baikal for underwater research, and to India, to some of the oldest megalithic complexes on Earth. These are not tourist trips. These are alternative journeys. Details are available at atlant.gg. Thank you for watching. Until next time.